this video, I'm gonna give you 5 steps to make your drone photos look perfect. They're gonna go from this to this. All right, so I've been working professionally as a photographer for about 15 years now. So if you're interested in drone photography, you can check out my Instagram page right over here. And if you're interested in portrait photography, you can check out my other Instagram page right over here. All right, so before we start editing, I want to talk about the gear that I have here. Everyone loves gear. This setup that I have here, I got my MacBook Pro, but you may be asking yourself, why do I have the extra monitor there? The screen on the MacBook Pro is not the best screen for editing. The reason is it doesn't really have a full color gamut, whereas the EZO monitor that I have, which covers the full Adobe RGB color gamut. So I don't really want to get too in depth with that, but basically you get more colors on this monitor than I do on this monitor. So this one is better for editing. It also has this nice little hood, so it keeps away ambient light, so it's better for editing color, exposure, and things like this. And obviously it's bigger. Now EZO is kind of the Rolls-Royce of monitors. Now I have an entry-level version, but even an entry-level Rolls-Royce is good, right? So for most people it will be overkill because everything on the internet is sRGB. If you're serious about editing and you want to do prints, make a book or something like this, then I recommend you get a good monitor. I highly recommend EZO, they're great. Now you also could get a Wacom Cintiq, but the newest versions, the Wacom Cintiq, seem almost a little blurry. I didn't really like them, so that's why I use this EZO instead. Now I'll put links to all this equipment in the description below. And then in addition, I also have this Wacom tablet. It's just a lot easier. I put on this little glove that comes with it. It's kind of like a funny little glove here. And basically it's a lot easier wearing this glove, and then I could just edit like this, moving my hand along the screen. It's a lot easier with this little tablet and this pen than using my hands on the computer. But I realized a lot of people aren't gonna get a Wacom tablet, so I'm not gonna use it for this video. So I'm gonna take it away and I'm just gonna edit using my computer, and then what I'm gonna be looking at is on my monitor. But so I can show you step by step these 5 steps, I basically mirrored it, so what you see on this screen, you see on that screen, and vice versa. And then I'm using a SanDisk 1 terabyte solid state drive. This is what I use to edit all my YouTube videos, all my client videos. And then I put it onto a bigger hard drive for storage, and I'll link to all this in the description below. And then the drones I used were DJI's Air 2S and the Mavic 2 Pro. All right, so now you know my setup. Let's get into editing. All right, so we're gonna start with the DJI Air 2S. I'm gonna go into the DJI Fly app. Now in the DJI Fly app, what I'm gonna do is go over here and click on photo. Now I could take a single photo, looks like that, or you could use this thing that they call Smart Capture, which uses the artificial intelligence, and it's supposed to be a lot better. Or you could go down here and use burst or timer. However, the best mode is AEB, or auto exposure bracketing. Now, although this takes a little work in post-production, it'll give you the most flexibility for editing your photos. And so that's the one I click on. So we click on AEB. And before we start, we can go in the upper right-hand corner and just click on those 3 little dots. Now for photography, you wanna go to camera and click on JPEG and RAW. In the future, it'll probably just say RAW and JPEG, they'll separate it. But you wanna shoot in RAW because that will give you more flexibility. So all we have right now in the DJI Fly app is JPEG and RAW. And then you can either shoot 16:9, which looks like this, which is good for YouTube thumbnails and is the dimensions of a video. Or you could go into 3:2, which is the traditional dimensions for photography. I usually choose 16:9 because it's a little wider than it is high. So I need a little more width than height, and that's the one I prefer, so we go to that. Then we click on the screen. Now I usually have it on autofocus, so I just click on the subject. You'll see that yellow little box, and I'll click on the subject, which is that farm right there. Now it doesn't look good right now, but don't freak out, okay? I'm actually gonna use a different photo to edit, but this first step is to make sure that you get the best photos for editing. Frame up your shot. After you framed up your shot, then I adjust my white balance. I usually shoot on manual. Now outside I shoot at about 5600 because that's the color of the sun outdoors, so 5600 is great. You can adjust that. Maybe we'll make it a little warmer. Maybe we'll go up to 5800. Okay, so that's 5800 Kelvin. And then we're gonna move a little closer to frame up the shot. You're gonna click right here, then you're gonna click on photography. Now you can take single shot, which looks like this. You can use smart capture, which uses DJI's artificial intelligence. And I see a lot of people using that, but that's not the one I use. You could take burst, which takes multiple photos of the same thing. And then you could go down to timer. Now the one I use is AEB, or auto exposure bracketing. And the reason I use AEB is because it's by far the best one, because it will take multiple photos, but it will expose it different. We click on the AEB, we make sure our focus is good, click there. We just press the white button, or you can press the photo record button to take a photo. In AEB, auto exposure bracketing, you have the option of taking 3 or 5 photos. It's always better to get more information, so I always take 5 photos. So choose 5, or if it's 7, whatever the highest number is for your drone, always choose that. So I choose 5. And then I press the white button to take the picture, or I use the record photo button on the controller. Once the picture is taken, press right here, and then we're gonna go into our photos. Now in our photos, we can see AEB in the corner right here. So we're gonna click on that. And we can download this. Now on the lower left hand side, we can press that and it downloads our photos as a TIFF file. So TIFF files are bigger than JPEGs, but we want the DNG or the RAW files. So just use the photos on your memory card or your micro SD card. But if you wanted to, you could press that to download that on your device as backup. Let's choose the photos we want. All right, so looking through these photos, we can browse through them. And as you can see, there's 5 different photos that we took. And they all have different exposures. So we gotta pick the ones we want. This one looks a little too overexposed, so I'm not gonna choose that one. If we go over here, this one looks okay, a little underexposed. But this one, I really like the sky, so I'm gonna click that one. And then I'm gonna click this one I like, and then I'm gonna press download. And I'm downloading those photos as TIFF files. If we go to our computer, that they're DNG files. All right, so on my computer, we can see here, we got our images. I put them in separate folders, but these are the best images I found. So I'm gonna put them in my edits folder. So I already picked them out. It saves multiple photos. It saves them both as JPEGs and DNG, but you want to use the DNG files because that's Adobe's version of a RAW file. So to me, those photos didn't look that great, but last autumn, I took the same shot with my Mavic 2 Pro and it looks a lot better. So looking here, you can see the photos that I took. These are all the DNG files. So I have 8 different choices. So we need to narrow that down first of all. All right, so there's a lot of software out there for both organizing and choosing your photos, and then for editing RAW files. However, for simplicity of this tutorial, the 2 softwares that I'm going to use are Adobe Lightroom and Adobe Photoshop. Now, normally I would use a thing called Capture One because I believe Capture One has the best RAW conversion and makes your photos look better than Adobe Lightroom. However, Adobe Lightroom is more user-friendly, and for me, it's also easier for organizing my photos, so that's where we're gonna use. Now, if I were with a client and I had a lot of RAW files and I needed to look through them really, really fast, I use Photo Mechanic. Now, Photo Mechanic is more for high-end commercial photography, but for most drone stuff, I don't use that. For most of my work, I use Adobe Lightroom, so we're gonna jump into that right now. All right, so we have our images in Adobe Lightroom. So what we can do is we press the L button and we can see it a lot better. So you press it once, it gets dim, press it twice and it gets dark. So you really could see everything. It's easier to see that way. Another thing down below is thumbnails. I just move this to make it bigger or smaller. So right here is good because we got 8 images. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna click on an image and now I'm gonna go through them. I'm gonna pick out the images that I like that are exposed for the money shot or the main subject in the photo. So the main subject is this barn right here. So I like this photo right here. So I'm gonna press P. If I wanna unpick it, I can press U, but I'm gonna pick it or put a flag by it. So I press P and I go on to the next one. Okay, this one looks a little overexposed. This one looks a little dark. This one dark, dark, too dark. This one looks good, so I press P. Too dark, too underexposed. So I go over to filters and then I press flagged. So now I see 2 images and then I click on them. We can see these 2 images. They look almost the same. I can go closer by just clicking and they both look pretty sharp or sharp enough. We're gonna leave both of them for now. I like both of them, so I'm gonna press Command A and then press 6, okay? And that's gonna put a little red around them. So the red ones I know are my absolute best ones. Then put filters off. And actually this one also is pretty well exposed, so I'm gonna put a 6 next to that one as well. If you zoom in to go back to all of these, you press G. So I press G, and now you can see all of them at once. Only the red ones are the finals. So I'm gonna look through these now again. I like the one with the best sky. Now I could tell already that the sky does not look good in any of them except for this one and this one. This one looks a little too underexposed, so I could tell this one has the best sky. So I'm gonna press 6. So I can see that only the reds are colored, so I can go to attributes and just click on red, and then only the red ones will pop up. These are the final images. Let's just see which ones we want. The final money shot here to here changes a little, so we're gonna undo this one. So unpick this, so I can just press 6, and that's gonna get rid of it, and press G to see them all. And I like this sky, so whichever photo matches this without moving. Okay, so I noticed this one moves, so I'm gonna unpick this, press 6, and now I have these two. Nothing moves. We got our money shot right here. Perfect exposure for the landscape, and then this other photo is a perfect exposure for the sky. Now, it's not perfect, that's why we're editing it, but it's a good start. Once we have our two photos, we need to start editing them. So we're gonna press Shift and Tab. We're gonna see all these different editing options, and then at the top, just click on the top right here. So our library is used to organize and pick out what we wanted, but the Develop tab is where we're gonna do all our editing. We go to Develop, because now it's time to edit. And we're still on step number 1, choosing our raw images and then editing our raw images. Now I don't do much editing to the raw images. Most of it's gonna be in Photoshop, but I'm gonna show you what I do to my raw images right now. So I use Library to organize my photos and pick the ones I want, and then I use Develop to edit my photos. So we're gonna go over to Develop, and in Develop, we can press G, we see the two photos. I start with the money photo, so the money photo is right here with the main subject, so let's click on that. And if we go to Develop, first thing I'm gonna adjust is the white balance. We can make it a little warmer or cooler. Now I'm gonna look at the bigger monitor to make sure I get this. It really looks good, but not, want it warm, but not too warm that the grass doesn't look real. I think right around there. 6,000. 6,000 looks good. Now the tint, I don't really want to change that. It was good at +3. Then I'm going to adjust my exposure. Now it looks a little overexposed. We can see our histogram up here. Now a histogram, I use a histogram as a starting point, but I don't put too much emphasis on it because your eye is going to be better than the histogram. So I look at the histogram, obviously it's overexposed. So the right side of the histogram, if I just move this, you can see everything goes to the right. That means things are overexposed. If everything moves to the left on the histogram, that means things are underexposed. And then if it kind of have a little balance on the left and right, that means it's usually properly exposed. But because we have such a bright sky and the image is so much darker, the land is so much darker, we can't really pay too much attention to the histogram. We kind of have to use our eye. So I'm going to use my eye, and I kind of like it right about there. Okay, so -10. And then the last thing I'm going to do is go down here to all the way down to detail. Now for detail, this is where we're going to add our sharpening. So first thing I do is move the radius down to 0.8. That's what I like. Usually 0.8 to 1.0 is good. And then for the sharpening, press on the subject. And I usually like it, we don't want it too much where you can see you sharpen it too much, the leaves don't look right. Okay, it looks artificial. Usually around 50 or 60 is good. Still doesn't. All right, so we'll put it at 60. That barn looks sharp enough, house looks sharp, and the leaves don't look too artificial. Okay, so that's good. We're gonna create a preset so we can copy it to the other image. So we don't have to do all the changes to another image. Now, if we had like 5 images and we wanted to add all those changes to the other images, the way we do it, we click on the photo we just adjusted. In our development tab, we go to develop and then new preset. I'm just gonna call this farmhouse. Notice everything here is changed. I don't want to change the exposure. So for the other image, I want to change that myself. So then we press create, and now we have that preset. Click on the ones you want to adjust. So it's this one and then just go to develop and then user presets and then just click farmhouse or whatever you call it. So now you can see all the adjustments. And now the only thing we have to change is the exposure. Exposure looks pretty good. I'm just gonna bring it down just a tad. So right there, maybe -15. Our sky is good. All right, so now that we've edited both of our photos, we got both of our raw images edited in Lightroom, we're gonna take them into Photoshop. So what I do is I press Command A to highlight both of them, and then I go up to File, Export. So you're gonna click where you want them. I have a particular folder for them. I save my raw images, the edits, as a TIFF file. So I'm gonna put it right here as a TIFF file in the folder right there. And so I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna click on TIFF. TIFF file, make sure it's no compression and 16-bit, and I make sure it's Adobe 1998 because that is a larger color profile. We can change it to sRGB later if we want. Adobe RGB 1998 is what we want, and then we press export. Okay, and it exports those images. Go out of Lightroom now. If you want to quit, yes. We can see our two files right here, and we're just going to highlight them and we're going to drag them into Photoshop. And now this is step number 2, where we're gonna add the majority of our changes. We're gonna combine these two photos because we used auto exposure bracketing, and then we're gonna just make it look so good. So we have our two images in Photoshop, and then we're gonna go up here to where it says edit, and then down to where it says sky replacement. Now this is rather new. Okay, before this didn't exist in Photoshop, but technology is getting better and better. We gotta pick our sky. So that looks kind of nice actually. Like it is replacing the sky, and you could choose all these different skies, but we had a sky that we liked. Maybe we could change this later, but what we're gonna do right now, we're gonna press the plus icon, and then we're gonna go to TIFFs. Okay, so we're gonna go to our sky photo, select that, and press open, and now we can select that. It's all done for us. So replace the sky, and it did all this stuff for us. You know, if we click off of this, you can see how it looked before, and then we can click on this, and it's pretty nuts. I clicked the foreground lighting. I didn't like that it changed that, so I'm gonna click off of that. So I'm just gonna leave that. So if we wanted to make this sky replacement, this layer, all one, highlight all of this, hold down Shift, and then click from the top to the bottom, and then what we could press is Command E, and Command E basically compress them all together. So now we have, it's just easier. All right, and that looks really good. Did almost perfect job of replacing the sky. Our tutorial's done. No, there's more stuff for us to do. In photography, you use a graduated neutral density filter, but for drones, this is the best way to make sure your sky and your land are both properly exposed. All right, so now we're gonna do some serious editing in Photoshop. I like to do all my little changes, and then we're gonna adjust color and stuff like that if we want to later. But first, let's do some of these little changes. What I do is just go over here, and we can press that little plus icon that creates a new layer. And then we're gonna go over here to where we see our spot healing brush. Click on our spot healing brush. Now to adjust the size of our spot healing brush, we can press Control Option, hold those down simultaneously, and then click on our mouse, and we move it to the right, it gets bigger. We move it to the left, it gets smaller. If we move it up, it gets softer, and if we move it down, it gets harder. I like to use kind of a soft brush, so I go all the way down to about 7 is good. You can also do that over here. If we click over here, you can adjust the size, and you can adjust the hardness right here. Okay, make sure you have it on content aware rather than create texture or proximity match. We're gonna zoom in. So some of the things I don't like. All right, we see these cows right here, but this cow right here, I think we can get rid of him. All right, we see this mother cow, this little baby cow. So make sure it also says sample all layers, and then we're gonna highlight right here, and then it's gonna be gone. Okay, there we go. Okay, and it's gone. It's not perfect, so you can go over it a couple times. We could also, if we want to fix that, it doesn't quite look perfect, so we can go to our clone stamp right here. We can make that smaller. We press Option right here, and it's gonna copy what we just pressed on. Then I can move it over here, and it's gonna paste it. Now, it's a little too harsh. My brush tool is also a little too hard. I'm gonna move it make it a little softer. Okay, let's do option click here. See, it's much better when it's softer. Option, and then we can go back to our spot healing and we can just go in here. All right, so that looks good. So we got rid of that. All right, the other thing I noticed, leaves right down here or whatever that is, leaves or color grass. I don't like the color of this, so I'm just gonna go over it, okay, and pretty much eliminates it. Okay, right there. It's just kind of distracting for my eye, so I'm just getting rid of it to make it better. And we can see the before and after. We get rid of those things. Okay, so that looks a lot better. This bush in the center, kind of a little distracting, so we can just make our brush bigger. We can also press right or left bracket tool on your keyboard. Makes it bigger and smaller, okay? And right there. Wow, it looks pretty good. Did a really good job. Used a clone stamp right here. Copy this and just clone that in. All right, that looks pretty good. We can see what we changed already. Now I noticed this white pole over here. I don't really like it. I'm actually gonna copy this. We can go to our background layer. I'm gonna go to my lasso tool. I'm just gonna draw around that. And I'm gonna copy it, press Command C, move right over here, press Command V, and I just pasted it. So I'm gonna bring that layer to the top, and I'm gonna call this pole, and the previous one, we'll just call it grass. So we can just move it, and we'll just move it right over here. We're gonna adjust the opacity so we can see it better, maybe to 50%, and just move it right over this pole, then change our opacity. So click on that layer, the pole, and then click mask, and you see that it's white, so we got to use our black brush because black does the opposite, and then we press B for brush, and we're just gonna move our brush over this area, and this basically erases away that background. Oop, that was not perfect. All right, so I go here, and then we're gonna go here. Okay, it's pretty good right now. All right, not perfect. We can make our brush smaller, and we can bring our opacity down. We're not brushing in too much. All right, so we need to change the color right there. So what we can do is to this little dropper here, and let's say we wanted this color. Okay, so it's gonna change it to that color. And we press B, bring our opacity down to 100. We gotta create a new layer. We're just gonna paint over this. We're just gonna paint over this. And then we just go here, and then we go down to color, move it to maybe 80%. So this is gonna be color. Add another layer, call this clone. I'm gonna use the clone stamp. Make sure our brush is not too hard. Option, and then what we could do is we could just go really close to here. And now with the clone stamp, just go up and down it, and then same here, press option, a little ways away, and then we just move it down. All right, and that looks a lot better. So now we got our two poles there. It doesn't stick out as much to the eye. I noticed there's some things in the grass that I really don't like. This tree over here is bothering me, and the fact that this cow is a little too close to the edge of the frame. So first let's take care of this tree. I'm gonna go to my grass layer and then spot healing brush again, and then make my brush a little bigger. And I'm just gonna go over this part right there and go right here. Did a pretty good job. It's not perfect. Might have to go over it a few times. And I'm just going to clone this grass over here. Maybe a little more of this grass right here. Grass right here. Make it look a little better. Looked a little patchy. Now I can go here. And now it's looking good. Now we want to go over here. I want to get rid of this, or I want to move this cow. So I'm just gonna go to my lasso tool. I'm gonna draw this right here. Command C, Command V. All right, and this is what I got. So where are we gonna put this cow? Well, I'm just gonna zoom out to see where it looks good. Make it kind of even. I think it would be better there. It kind of flows nicer. We'll call this cow. Again, we're gonna create a mask around that cow, and then we could just go to our brush tool, just go around this cow right here. And the baby cow kind of looks kind of funny, doesn't, that's pretty good. For this cow right here, we're just gonna go to our clone stamp. Maybe I gotta do it here. Too many layers. All right, I do it on my bottom layer, doesn't matter. Okay, so I think that looks better. Cows are a little more even, so that cow looks better right there. Image is looking a lot cleaner, so it's looking really good. Next thing I want to do is make this farm pop out a little more, make it a little more three-dimensional. We want to go here to where it says curves, and we're going to bring right around here, we're going to bring this up near the highlights. We want to bring that up, bring this down to where it was. We zoom in, we can see, because we're only focusing on the farmhouse. We don't want that red to be too dark, and we're going to make it, you know, that roof a little brighter. Can exaggerate it a little bit, and as you can see, that adds more contrast to our image, but it ruins our sky. But we're only worried about the house right here, making it pop out. We can go over here to our eraser tool, and now we're just gonna kind of go over the farmhouse. Doesn't have to be perfect, just kind of go over here. You can just zoom in a little bit. All right, and basically this will make the farmhouse stand out a lot more. Make the building, give it almost like a three-dimensional quality. Show you the difference when we're done here. Then we go in the house right here. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but do it as good as possible. That looks pretty good. So then what you can see is it on and off. It's a big difference, okay? It makes it kind of stand out, gives it almost like a three-dimensional quality, and it might be a little too much, so we can just feather this a little bit to where we want it, maybe to like 80%. Maybe that's too much, maybe 70%. Okay, we could also just bring our curve down, but how much do we want it? See, like here's normal, kind of like that. All right, want to stand out but don't want to get ridiculous. All right, so it stands out definitely. All right, so the last little finishing touches I'm going to put on it, create a new layer, is just go to B, my brush tool. I'm going to pick a color. So I picked this color. I like this color right here. It's kind of the same color as these leaves right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to paint in all the bright areas of the sky. So the bright areas of the sky, basically all the areas that aren't really dark, okay? Just most of the sky. Paint in these bright areas. Then I'm gonna go to here, go down to color, and we're gonna move this down. All right, we don't move it down to maybe about, I think 5 might be all right. So it's very subtle, but I think it just makes the sky look a little more warm. It kind of matches the overall scene better. I'm gonna leave that like it is. Maybe 4, maybe 5 is too much, so I'm gonna leave it at 4. And make sure this is on color. The other thing we're gonna do, we're gonna press Shift Command N, and we're gonna call this Dodge and Burn. Make sure it's soft light, and make sure you click here where it says Fill with Soft Light, Neutral Color, 50% Gray. Now you press B for brush. First we're going to switch to black. Now up here we want our opacity to be at 5% and our flow to be at 10%. We're just going to kind of brush over here. Maybe make our brush tool a little bigger, okay? And what is that doing? It's just making these contours a little more, so it makes the hill a little more defined. You could do it right here too, along the tops of these hills. Just make it maybe a little more defined. Wherever you see these little shadows right here. And then we can switch it, press X, and it's gonna switch to white. Bring out this white part right here a little more. Bring this up to 5, and bring the flow down to 5%. So it's very subtle. Do it down here a little bit. Seems a little dark. Maybe right here. That cow looked a little bit dark. So this is basically just increasing or decreasing the exposure, but it's not affecting the color too much. cow is a little dark. All right, that's good. We could also do right here on some of these trees, just to make them stand out, especially the orange part. So just where we see it that it's orange, we could just go over it. So just the orange part, or wherever it's brightest. So if you're taking pictures of trees and the trees are not orange or red, okay, they're just green. Like let's just take this green tree right here. Let's zoom in a little bit. We're just gonna be going over the brightest parts of the tree, and that'll just make it pop out a little more. Okay, and you can see the difference. Now, instead of adding vibrance is great for people's faces, but it's not really good for scenes like this. Instead, I'm gonna use hue saturation, because hue saturation is going to make the landscape more saturated, whereas vibrance is gonna do the whole image, including the sky. And I think vibrance is gonna do the sky too much. Use my saturation. You don't need too much. And that looks pretty good. Go in the opposite direction if you want it a little more muted colors. There's other ways to do that. I would use the channel mixer if you wanted to use muted, but we want this to pop out a little bit. So maybe right there, 14 is good, and you can see the difference. Subtlety is key. You don't want to do it too much. Even this seems a little too much, but because it's an autumn picture, I think it's okay. We want to go here and we want to add a solid color. So the solid color I'm going to add just to unify everything. All right, something like that. All right, then I'm going to go down to color and I'm going to bring it back. I want to make it very subtle, so let's just go down to 1%. Just makes it a little warmer, or we could just leave it at normal. See, it just makes it a little warmer. Might be a little too much, so let's bring our flow down to 50, our fill down to 50. All right, very subtle. One last thing, if I was gonna print this or put it on my website where it was really important, someone might view it big, I would add some sharpening to it. So what I do is I go here, so I'd highlight the whole thing, press Shift from the top to the bottom, and then I go Command E, and that flattens it. Then I duplicate the layer, Command J. We're gonna go up to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. Sometimes I put my threshold up just a tad. Sharpness 50 is good for this image. You can zoom in and see how that looks. 65 is good. Now what I'm gonna do is create a layer mask. Then I'm gonna press Command I and go over here, press B for brush, and then make sure it's on white by clicking over here. You can also press B for brush and then X changes it from black to white. And then we go closely, we're going to make sure our opacity and our flow are at 100 and our brush is super hard, and make sure we're on the black layer here. You can see the sharpening we've done, okay? So it doesn't have to be perfect, just try to go over the farm or whatever you want to sharpen, okay? This works for portraits as well. So I'm gonna go very quickly. See these trees right here a little bit, just to make them pop out a little bit. And then these trees, since they're kind of there, we can see it. It's very subtle, but see how it pops out a little bit? That's what we want. All right, now it's time to save and export. So what I do is I go up here and save as, and I've already actually saved it. So I have all these different folders that I could save it. First I save a PSD file, and that's kind of like a master file. So if I want to make any changes in the future, I could do so. So we click Photoshop here and just save. Okay, so now I have my PSD file saved. Next thing I want to do is go here, File, and then Export, Save for Web. If you wanted to print, you could go here, you could just leave this off, unclick that, and it's going to save as an Adobe 1998 file. However, for most people, if you're gonna post it online, make sure you click this, convert to sRGB. Over 95% of all monitors out there are sRGB, and that's what people look at both on their phones and on their computers. Most people don't have a screen like this, which has the full color gamut of Adobe, so sRGB is what we're gonna click. If I wanted to do 100% quality for printing, we could leave it at sRGB, leave it like that. Or if I was gonna print it myself, I would unclick that and then print it with my own printer set to Adobe 1998 settings. but this isn't a printing video. Let's say we want to upload this to our website or send it to a client or for Instagram or something like this. Click convert to sRGB. Then I'm gonna click this quality. I'm gonna put around 70 to 80%. We'll say 80%. And then width, I usually do, we'll say about 20 by 48. That's a pretty good size, maybe even smaller. Okay, so we'll do 70%. One more thing, make sure this is bicubic smoother. It doesn't degrade the image. And this is for my social media. Okay, so my social media folder is right there. If I wanted to print it or just a bigger file, I go save for web and we'll leave this at 100%. All right, and we can see the file size right here. So that's about 11.5 megabits, which is pretty big. So sRGB, save, and we're good. Okay, so now we have all the versions that we need. Now I could also make another one for Instagram. Now Instagram is different. We go over here, click on this little guy right here. We go our different ratios. Instagram's usually 4:5. Vertical photos are better on Instagram. They get better engagement and so forth. So we're gonna just go like this. Just frame it up kind of nice. Pretty nice like that to my eye, maybe right there. And then crop. So we got that. So that's gonna be for Instagram. And file, export, save as. And then we could just go here and just make it smaller just like before. Maybe even smaller. Let's just say 1600. And then I'm just gonna put edits, social media, and I'm just gonna put here 4:5, 4, and I'm just gonna put IG. So I remember, okay. All right, so now we can see the before and after. If we go from before to after, I probably could have added a little more contrast or a little more saturation. I don't like to overdo it too much because I think stuff online a lot of times is too overdone. So I like to err on the side of subtlety. I like it to look real, I like it to look good, but look like it's a real photo, not something artificial, especially when it's nature. When it's too oversaturated or too overdone, it just looks artificial and fake to me. So that's my personal preference. So hopefully you learned a few things in this tutorial. If you enjoyed it, give it a thumbs up, maybe share it with a friend if you think they'll enjoy it. If you want more step-by-step tutorials just like this to master your drone, I created an entire DJI drone course, which I've been working on for over 2 years, and I keep updating it. So now with the DJI Fly app, all the new features, editing techniques, photography, filmmaking, you'll learn everything you need to know to be a professional, start making money with your drone if you want to do so. Just click on the link below. I have some free training so you can check that out, or you can join the full course. My name is Brett Garamella, the Drone Pilot Pro, and remember, fly like a pro.